we talked about several different things that are going to feed into what we're talking about today. So today we're going to talk about communication. Somebody asked a great question this week, and so I thought that would be worth talking about. Ingredients for healing. I think it was you last week that asked about triggers and remaining angry. We will stay in a cycle of anger. You know, obviously this is anger management, so we want to talk about those things. If we don't receive validation, if we don't feel like we've been heard, if we don't feel like someone understands us. So we'll go over that. And then relationship stamina and some things that I see that most people don't want to hear. So somebody asked me the question, if you could give one golden nugget of information that you think helps people, what would that be? And I said, well, I probably don't have a popular answer because most of my information probably isn't popular in a world where people want to keep their head buried in the sand. And many people do based on what I see. It's communication. But most people have no clue how to do that. Again, there's certain things that feed healthy communication, just like there's certain things that feed an unhealthy society versus a healthy society. So the things that feed healthy communication are vulnerability, openness, truth. Otherwise, the communication doesn't do much. And it certainly doesn't lead to connection, which is what we want. We also want it to lead to problem solving. In our very bureaucratic culture, where people don't commit to things, they can use communication, well, non-communication to their advantage. Because they can do the no response is a response and have you jump through a million hoops. And then the result of that is they never have to take any accountability. But if we want communication to be effective, you have to be vulnerable, you have to be open, and you have to be willing to tell people the truth. Otherwise, you don't get anywhere. Otherwise, it's just talking or not. Make sense? Yeah. So like my own personal experience is, like my dad never really talked much. In fact, it was uncomfortable and awkward. He never really spoke all that much. So these things were lacking. So he had to read his mind. So as a result, I get very agitated and triggered when people don't communicate because I had to spend my entire childhood reading my dad's mind and trying to figure out his feelings and his mood and what he was thinking and any kind of direction. And then he would blow up. So it was inconsistent. So it was like, okay, you go from no communication to blowing up, having an expectation that people should read your mind. So that can create a lot of intuitiveness. On my part, I'm a pretty highly intuitive person, almost sometimes to the point where I see myself as pretty psychic in some ways. But it's all a result of a trauma response. It's a result of being able to read a person so well that you basically can read their mind. Mm-hmm. So you have a heightened awareness, so to speak. Now, if you grow up in a home that is functional, which there aren't many, if there are any, it would be hard to find. I think there are more on the horizon as people learn. We can create functional families. Did most of us grow up in functional families? No. And again, it's not blame. When we approach our parents or we approach our grandparents or we approach people, it's not to blame them. It's to educate them and to say, you may not be aware that your upbringing and what you have propagated is unhealthy, but it is. And we'll watch a video about that today. It is unhealthy. And it's all rooted in those past belief systems that have to change. So we have to teach people how to communicate. And they have to have a willingness to do that. Otherwise, you don't have any connection. And you can't heal from things. So we're in a state right now in our culture where people are crying out to heal. I'll show you a video by Deepak Chopra where he talked about the pandemic being our mental health. That's the true pandemic. We are at a point in our evolution where if we don't change things, and I do agree with him, we could be on the verge of some kind of extinction because things are not going well. Do I think that we can change that? Yeah. I think we can change it if we have enough people who are willing to and who stop playing some of these ego games that are very apparent and that people are receptive to taking information in. If they're not receptive to that and they're just going to stonewall that information, no, we're not going to get anywhere. Because we cannot continue things the way that they were. And that part has really become evident. We simply can't do that anymore. It's not working anymore. There's enough people aware that it's not working. So that leads us to ingredients for healing. So I have a case study. Sarah, a name I just chose. It's not anybody specific. It's not even real necessarily. It's real in the sense that it happens. So we have Sarah. And Sarah got sexually assaulted in 1981, going to a party off campus, Georgetown University, and she gets sexually assaulted. So she goes to the Student Health Center, which is what would be recommended. 1981, pretty closed mindsets. I mean, we still have closed mindsets, so 1981, you're really going to have closed mindsets. She goes to the Student Health Center, and the counselor tells her, why were you there? What were you wearing and why were you out late? So that's all rooted in shame. Is shame healing? No. It's toxic. But that's what we...
So most likely what the counselor is saying is whatever happened is her fault.
Basically, yeah. Projecting it back onto her and saying, if you wouldn't have been there, that wouldn't happen. If you wouldn't have been out late, that wouldn't happen. Yeah. But that was very commonplace. Sometimes you'd be surprised. Sometimes people still think this way, sadly. So the result of that is she holds shame, deals with depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, guilt,
homicide,
shame,
suicide, homicide,
anger, yeah, and drops out. She ends up dropping out. So that's outcome one. You can apply this to any situation in life where you feel like you have been wronged in some way. And it happens. And I'm going to tell you the difference between a true victim and a person who has a victim mentality. They're different. So being a true victim and having victim mentality are different. So outcome two is Sarah, same experience. This time goes to the same health center, but she gets a different counselor. This counselor has more of an evolved mindset, even in 1981, and says, I'm sorry that happened to you. So she hears the whole story out. She hears her. She says, that should not have happened. Maybe we need to make things safer. Problem solving. Right? She's going to problem solve with her and say, maybe we need to look at things. Maybe we need to have a safer campus. Or maybe we need to have some type of curfew. There could be a lot of things that could be put into place. But the bottom line is she hears her. So she hears. There's validation. Problem solving. Trust. And so Sarah now feels better. And she says, come see me again if you need to. Come see me as many times as you need to. So Sarah isn't met with shame this time. She's met with understanding. One of the ingredients. So she starts to heal. She doesn't struggle with all those things, such as anxiety, depression, PTSD, shame, and she ends up graduating with a 3.2 and goes on with her life. And she learns from the situation. She's able to grow. So sometimes we stunt people from growing by gaslighting them, because that first outcome was all rooted in gaslighting, which is what a lot of our society does. You share something with the wrong person, they tell you something that is gaslighting in nature, and then you feel like it was your fault, and this has happened to me many times, and you become angrier. And that's sometimes at the root of people's anger. They know in their own being, and by their own being I mean their own heart, they know something wasn't right, and they just can't find the right person to say, yeah, that's not right. That shouldn't have happened. I'm sorry that happened to you. So that's somebody who experienced a situation where they were truly victimized. The problem is the people who gaslight and often do the wounding are masters at playing the victim. So they play the victim, and that's where the victim mentality comes from. Because they're wounding as a result of their own stuff that they haven't healed. And they don't want to heal it. It's rooted in this communication, right? They don't want to hear truth. And because they don't want to hear truth, they will stonewall information, they will wound people, and then to avoid accountability, they will play the victim. They will tell lies and stories to other people so that they never have to take accountability. So relationship stamina, that's the third thing I want to talk about today. And then we'll watch some of the videos that I mentioned. So relationship stamina, in our society, people have a strong desire to belong. We've talked about that. How they are going about it is very toxic and is actually creating more problems. They're going about it in very unrealistic ways. And it's all rooted in our ego and image. So I see a lot of things. I use social media to conduct some of my own research. And so what I see a lot of people do after they've had multiple broken relationships, in fact, with each broken relationship that they have, rather than looking at themselves, which is where you have to look, and in this video, Deepak Chopra talks about that exact thing. How do we change the world? We have to look at ourselves. Most people won't do that. So they fail to do that after their relationship ends. And then they say, well, I'm going to set the bar higher. Right? It wasn't me. It was the other person. So I just need to find someone who can treat me even better. So what happens is they have a relationship. We're all human, right? We all make mistakes. And instead of having a growth mindset and talking about it and communicating using those three things that I mentioned, they blame and place the blame back and forth. So they play the blame game. Then one person says they're leaving, I'm going to go find somebody better. But they never look at themselves, and they tell themselves a story. It's a delusion. And then they have to prove it. So they get into this new relationship and they elevate this person so high. And they're like, this person's it. This person's everything. Now, should we have standards for things? Certainly. One of the standards we need to have is that somebody has a growth mindset. We certainly need to have that standard. And so they will put this person on a pedestal, so to speak. And suddenly this person values them and appreciates them, and they're in this initial phase of the relationship. And I call it relationship stamina because life is life. So life, as it was presented here with all its problems, which are bills, right? I have a blog called Geysers, Managing Geysers. There's a main geyser that's always going off. bills, things to fix, projects, cars to take care of, kids to take care of if you have them, animals to take care of if you have them, people at work to deal with that you don't always like to deal with. Those, life will be life. Traffic jams. None of us are free of it. But when we believe that there's this relationship out there that's going to be better and that's going to not take as much work, instead of increasing our stamina, we decrease our stamina. And then we put it all on this person. We project it all onto this person. You're the one that needs to make it better. You need to be better than the last person. You need to appreciate how nice I am. You need to appreciate how good I look. Because the last person didn't do that. And I didn't realize I was projecting on them that they had to do that. Probably didn't communicate it. So there's probably some fragmented communication and that resulted in the relationship ending in the first place. But this person has a victim mentality and they don't want to take any responsibility. And when somebody doesn't want to take any responsibility, then they're like, I need to find somebody better. I need to find somebody who's not going to challenge me and who's not going to make me take responsibility. Because if they do, they're going to fall from that pedestal. But all these things still have to get done. You can have a great first couple months where somebody is all about telling you how great you are. And, you know, I see it on social media. People talk to each other and they're like, oh, I love you. You're so gorgeous, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, where are these people having real conversations about real life? And why is this being pushed so hard publicly? What is this person trying to convince themselves of and others of? And what are they avoiding? They're probably avoiding communication. They're probably avoiding the ingredients for their own healing. And they probably lack stamina and resilience. And so that relationship will not last. And people will be like, you're just jealous of our great relationship. And it's like, no, I have enough awareness and insight to know that the relationship isn't great. Because all human relationships take work. The minute we start labeling things as great or so amazing or this is my soulmate. Your soulmate is the person who agrees to work through all these things with you. That's your soulmate who says, okay, things might get pretty shitty at some point in time. They likely will because that's life. And are we going to have enough stamina to get through those things together? And we may not be on Facebook telling each other how gorgeous we are and mi amor or whatever verbiage people use to make it look. It's all to make it look like, basically, it's the mindset of the narcissist, right? Look at me, I have this great relationship. Don't you want to follow me? Don't you want to see how happy I am? I'll teach you how to be happy. Well, people aren't happy all the time. Sometimes bills don't make people happy. Sometimes getting COVID doesn't make people happy. Sometimes being in a pandemic doesn't make people happy. Sometimes going to work and dealing with people doesn't make them happy. And they have to have a place that's safe for them to process that. And if that's the criteria, because I do see some people that's the criteria of their relationship, that's how they see strength. They're like, you have to be happy all the time because anything else makes me uncomfortable. I really believe my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law have that relationship. He views strong as you smiling all the time. If she does anything outside of that, that is too uncomfortable for him. And so he will likely gaslight her and